Let's get one thing straight. The 1960s weren't all flower power and Hollywood gloss. Underneath the surface, there was a cinematic revolution, raw, wild, and ready to break every rule. Martin Scorsese, never one to play it safe, says you can't understand modern movies until you've stared into the wild heart of exploitation cinema. So here's a question. Do you have the nerve to face the films that rewrote the playbook? Stick around. What you see here might change the way you watch movies forever. Psycho, 1960. It's hard to imagine now, but in 1960, Psycho didn't just push boundaries, it blew them to smithereens. Hitchcock wasn't out to make just another thriller. He wanted to traumatize you, flip every expectation, and leave the audience gasping in the lobby, wondering what the hell just happened. This wasn't the polite suspense of Rear Window or the elegant chills of Vertigo. No, Psycho was a dirty little secret that Hollywood never saw coming. Let's set the scene. Hitchcock shot the movie in black and white, using his television crew on a shoestring budget by design. He wanted it to feel cheap, pulpy, like something you weren't supposed to see. He bought the rights to Robert Bloch's novel in secret, then snatched up every copy he could find to keep the ending under wraps. The result? Audiences walked in thinking Janet Leigh was the star. 30 minutes later, she's dead in the shower, and everyone's trust in Hollywood storytelling was dead with her. Psycho isn't just about a knife and a scream. It's about paranoia, shame, and the monsters lurking inside the walls of the American family. The shower scene gets all the press, but Scorsese, like any real student of cinema, zeroes in on the film's relentless tension, its sickly humor, and its willingness to disturb. He said it himself. It's so familiar you think, great movie, but not so scary anymore. Then you watch it, and you start thinking again. This is extremely disturbing on so many levels. This was the moment horror stopped being about ghosts and started being about people, lonely, broken, unpredictable people. Psycho was the blueprint for 1,000 slashers, the film that dared to make the audience complicit. Hitchcock played viewers like an organ, and we loved him for it, even as we left the theater double-checking every locked door. Psycho is the godfather of exploitation, raw, shocking, and still, after all these years, capable of ruining your next shower. Peeping Tom, 1960. If Psycho was the bomb that went off in polite cinema, Peeping Tom was the corpse they tried to bury and forget. Michael Powell, the genius behind lush British classics like The Red Shoes, suddenly delivered a film so sleazy, so psychologically twisted, that it didn't just get banned, it practically ended his career. Critics called it sick, evil, and perverted. Audiences recoiled. The British film establishment blacklisted Powell overnight, and for years, the movie itself was almost impossible to find. But Scorsese? He saw something the censors didn't. This isn't just a serial killer film. It's a film about watching, about the sickness at the heart of voyeurism. Carl Baum plays Mark, a shy cameraman who films women's faces as he murders them, capturing their final terror on celluloid. The movie dares you to look and then makes you feel dirty for enjoying the view. There are no comforting heroes here. You're inside the killer's head, seeing through his lens, and the line between the audience and the monster starts to blur. Powell's direction is brazen. Mirrors everywhere, cameras everywhere, and a constant sense that you're being watched. By Mark, by Powell, by your own guilty conscience. The film's color is lurid, almost feverish, and the violence is more psychological than physical. It isn't about body count. It's about anxiety, obsession, the secret darkness behind closed curtains. If you're looking for the blueprint for every found footage or killer's POV horror movie, this is it. Scorsese calls Peeping Tom a masterpiece of British cinema. And he's not alone. Decades after it was buried, Scorsese helped resurrect the film, championing its restoration and personally ensuring it got the credit it deserved. Today, it's seen as the mirror twin of Psycho, a film that's not afraid to stare back at you and ask, "Are you sure you want to keep watching?" Exploitation at its finest, and its most unsettling. Blood Feast, 1963. Let's talk about gore. Not classy suspense, not shadows on the wall. Actual, unfiltered, blood-soaked carnage. If you're sick of hearing that horror is all about what you don't see, Blood Feast is the antidote you never asked for. Herschel Gordon Lewis, a man who looked more like your uncle's accountant than a cinematic provocateur, decided that America was ready for something a little less subtle. So he made Blood Feast, the first true splatter movie, and a film so crass that theaters handed out vomit bags as part of the promotion. The plot? An Egyptian caterer butchers women for a goddess's feast. That's it. No metaphors, no psychological games. Just meat, mayhem, and enough ketchup to stock a diner. The acting is atrocious, the effects are primitive, but none of that matters. What matters is how far Lewis was willing to go, and how much further he forced audiences to follow. Heads are hacked, tongues are ripped out, and all of it is shown in sticky, revolting close-up. Critics called it filth. Moral guardians wanted it burned. But kids lined up around the block, daring each other not to flinch. This is exploitation with a capital E, loud, cheap, and 100% unashamed. And that's why Scorsese gives it respect. He said that the splatter movement didn't just open the floodgates for horror, it changed the rules for all filmmakers. Censorship would never be the same, and neither would the movies. Blood Feast is an endurance test, a joke, a dare, and, somehow, a revolution. You don't watch it for the story. You watch it to see how much you can take, and if you make it through, congratulations, you've survived the first wave of American gore. Exploitation cinema owes this film a blood debt, and so do you. Shock Corridor 1963. Here's the deal. If you want to understand just how wild and fearless exploitation cinema could get in the 60s, walk straight into Shock Corridor. Samuel Fuller, the one-man demolition crew of American genre films, takes the respectable social problem drama and turns it into a fever dream. Forget the sanitized Hollywood versions of insanity. This movie shoves you right into the madhouse and locks the door. The premise is pulpy perfection. A journalist fakes insanity to solve a murder inside a mental hospital, hoping to win a Pulitzer by finding the killer. But what starts as an investigation quickly mutates into a trip through America's collective nightmares. This place isn't just full of stereotypes, it's full of broken men, raging delusions, and racial violence. And at the center is Johnny, our hero, slowly losing his grip as the walls close in. Fuller shoots it all in blinding black and white, with abrupt cuts, howling monologues, and surreal musical numbers that come out of nowhere. The movie doesn't just depict madness. It makes you feel it. There's a haunted beauty to the chaos, a sense that beneath the exploitation surface, Fuller is doing real social surgery. Here are the forgotten, the discarded, the casualties of America's obsession with winning at any cost. Scorsese has always championed Fuller as one of the true renegades, someone who used cheap budgets and tabloid headlines to say the unsayable. Shock Corridor isn't pretty. It isn't even polite, but it's unforgettable. It rips the lid off the institution, showing you the rot underneath, and then asks, how much of this is really fiction? It's a movie that stares, unblinking, into the abyss, and then dares you to do the same. The Naked Kiss. 1964. If you thought Shock Corridor was wild, Fuller's next punch to the gut is even more audacious. The Naked Kiss opens with a scene that's so raw, so in your face, that even today it can knock the wind out of you. A prostitute beats her pimp senseless with her wig. The camera lingers as her bald scalp is exposed, stripping away all glamour. Welcome to the world of exploitation, where nothing is sacred and nobody gets to look away. The story follows Kelly, a woman on the run from her past, trying to build a new life as a nurse in a small town. But this isn't a redemption story with easy answers. The town's surface respectability masks horrors that make Kelly's old life look downright wholesome. Corruption, abuse, and sickening secrets fester beneath the white picket fences. Kelly, who just wants a second chance, becomes the town's scapegoat, framed and reviled when she won't play by the rules. Fuller doesn't sugarcoat anything. The dialogue is tough as nails. The performances are raw, and the plot takes risks that would terrify most studios even today. One moment you're watching a pulp melodrama, the next you're face first in one of the darkest, most taboo-breaking plot twists of the 60s. This is exploitation cinema, doing what it does best, showing you the things polite society pretends don't exist. Scorsese is obsessed with Fuller's style, how he could use the rawest material to create something bracing, real, and even beautiful. The Naked Kiss is cinema with the gloves off. It's not here to make you comfortable. It's here to peel back the skin and see what's underneath. And if you can handle it, you might just discover a little redemption at the bottom of the barrel. Faster, Pussycat. Kill, kill. 1965. Buckle up. Russ Meyer's Faster, Pussycat, Kill, Kill is the kind of movie that kicks you in the face and then does a victory lap around your living room. Forget the polite, sanitized femme fatales of old Hollywood. This is girl gang cinema at its most outrageous. Imagine three go-go dancers in black leather tearing up the desert, breaking speed limits and men's necks with the same ruthless enthusiasm. This is pulp, this is camp, and this is exploitation with the pedal floored. The plot barely matters. Varla, Rosie, and Billy are a trio of bad girls on a rampage. They race cars, rob, seduce, and kill. The dialogue is so sharp it cuts, and Meyer shoots every frame with the eye of a comic book artist. Angles, curves, and attitude. The women are larger than life. The men are mostly roadkill, and every minute is juiced with unfiltered adrenaline. At the time, critics didn't know what to make of it. Too crude for the mainstream, too weird for the drive-in regulars, Faster Pussycat became a cult legend by sheer force of personality. Scorsese, who's always had a soft spot for movies that break the rules, calls Meyer a real auteur and points to this film as proof that exploitation could be both wild and visionary. Here's the real genius. Beneath the mayhem, Meyer sneaks in sly jokes, reversals, and a sly subversion of gender roles. The women are predators, the men their hapless prey. And by the time the dust settles, you're not sure if you've watched a trash classic or a feminist manifesto. Maybe both. Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill is a shot of pure exploitation adrenaline, and Scorsese wants you to feel every rush, every crash, and every wild-eyed laugh. Repulsion. 1965. Step inside the apartment and leave the lights on. Roman Polanski's Repulsion isn't just a horror movie. It's a spiral into madness that drags you down with it, inch by excruciating inch. Catherine Deneuve, in a performance that's all nerves and blank stares, plays Carol, a woman whose fear of men and intimacy turns her tiny London flat into a prison of the mind. It's not the monsters outside that matter. It's the monsters crawling around inside your own skull. Polanski's camera is merciless. Cracks appear in the walls, shadows flicker, and hands reach out from nowhere. Time stutters and melts. You're not sure if you're watching Carol's breakdown or experiencing one yourself. The horror is subtle at first, then ramped up with nightmarish intensity, hands coming through the walls, hallucinations, and finally violence that feels both inevitable and deeply disturbing. What makes Repulsion such a landmark isn't just the scares. It's the way Polanski turns the apartment into a living, breathing antagonist. The sound design alone is enough to keep you up at night. Ticking clocks, buzzing flies, the relentless drip of a faucet. And at the center is Deneuve, whose performance is as chilly as a morgue slab. She doesn't scream, she implodes. Scorsese counts Repulsion among the psychological horror films that rewrote the rules. It's not about who gets killed, but what gets exposed. Here, exploitation isn't a carnival of blood, it's a slow-motion car crash of the soul. The audience is implicated, drawn into Carol's paranoia, left stranded in a world where nothing feels safe, not even your own mind. Repulsion is the kind of movie that doesn't let you off easy. You walk away haunted, searching your own reflection for cracks. That's not just horror, that's exploitation, elevated to a razor's edge. Color Me Blood Red, 1965. If you thought Blood Feast was wild, you haven't seen anything until you've witnessed Color Me Blood Red. Herschel Gordon Lewis doubles down on his obsession with blood and body parts. Only this time, he drags the art world into his slaughterhouse. The result? A gonzo fusion of beatnik satire and splatter horror, soaked in technicolor carnage and so tasteless, even midnight movie regulars might need a moment to recover. Here's the setup. An angry, struggling artist named Adam Sorg just can't find the right shade of red, until, in a fit of rage, he accidentally discovers that human blood is the perfect pigment. From there, inspiration becomes a license for murder. His career skyrockets with gruesome canvases, and the body count rises as fast as the prices. It's the art world as a meat market, and Lewis has a blast skewering every last pretension. What makes Color Me Blood Red so irresistible isn't just the buckets of gore, though there are plenty. It's the cartoonish, almost gleeful way Lewis treats art and violence as two sides of the same depraved coin. The murders are outrageous, the performances barely qualify as acting, and the dialogue feels like it was written on a dare. But somehow, it all works. The movie's sheer audacity is its greatest asset. Scorsese has never been shy about tipping his hat to exploitation filmmakers who refuse to play by the rules. And Color Me Blood Red is a prime example. It's a film that understands the weird, uncomfortable thrill of watching something you shouldn't be watching. By the time the paint dries, you're left laughing, wincing, and wondering just how far cinema can go when it has nothing left to lose. That's exploitation, messy, unrefined, and absolutely unforgettable. The Trip, 1967. Think you've seen a psychedelic movie? Unless you've taken The Trip, you're still stuck in Kansas. Roger Corman, the king of drive-in rebellion, teams up with Jack Nicholson. Yes, that Jack Nicholson, who wrote the script to deliver an acid-soaked descent into the weirdest corners of the 1960s counterculture. This isn't just a film about LSD. It is LSD, pressed onto celluloid, daring you to take a hit and hold on for dear life. The story is basically a framework for pure sensation. Peter Fonda plays Paul, a commercial director whose midlife crisis sends him on a mind-bending journey through the seedy clubs and sun-blasted beaches of Los Angeles. The narrative dissolves into kaleidoscopic visuals, hallucinations, and wild bursts of color and sound. Corman and his crew shot guerrilla style on the Sunset Strip, capturing the real energy of the era: youth, confusion, rebellion, and the ever-present risk of a bad trip. What's wild is that The Trip was made just before the summer of love turned ugly. There's a rawness here, an innocence balanced on the knife edge of chaos. It's got Dennis Hopper as a spaced-out guide, Bruce Dern grinning in the shadows, and a cast of beautiful doomed party people who look like they wandered in from a real acid test. Scorsese never downplays the influence of Roger Corman, his old boss and mentor, on the whole generation of filmmakers who learned to shoot fast, cheap, and dirty. The Trip is a masterclass in low-budget innovation. It's not about the plot. It's about the experience, the breakdown of boundaries, the feeling that anything can happen, and probably will. The studio tried to censor it, but there's no way to box in this much chaos. If you want to know what the 60s really felt like for the kids living on the edge, skip the history books. Take The Trip. Just don't expect to come back the same. Branded to Kill, 1967. Most people think of exploitation movies as an American affair, but Japan was cooking up its own brand of cinematic madness. Enter Seijun Suzuki, the wild man of Japanese noir, with Branded to Kill, a film so strange, so stylized, and so gloriously defiant that it got Suzuki fired from the studio forever. You want a crime movie that feels like a fever dream? This is the one. Joe Shishido plays Goro Hanada, a hitman with a face like a thundercloud and a bizarre addiction to the smell of boiling rice. What follows is less a coherent plot than a series of surreal set pieces: sex, gunfights, double crosses, and more visual flourishes than most directors manage in a whole career. Suzuki throws everything at the screen: extreme close-ups, jump cuts, graphic symbols, and dialogue that teeters between poetry and madness. The movie was supposed to be just another Yakuza thriller. Instead, it became a full-on assault on genre conventions. Gangsters pop up out of nowhere, reality melts at the edges, and Goro's world collapses into pure chaos. Studio bosses were so baffled they canned Suzuki on the spot. But over the years, Branded to Kill gained cult status, inspiring everyone from Jim Jarmusch to Quentin Tarantino. And yes, Martin Scorsese. Scorsese has always admired directors who blow the walls off their genres, and Branded to Kill does exactly that. It's a bullet-riddled, black-and-white hallucination, a gangster film that dares you to try and make sense of it, then laughs when you fail. The lesson? Sometimes the best movies are the ones that refuse to play by any rules except their own. Branded to Kill is cinematic punk rock, brash, confusing, and cool as hell. If you want to know where modern action aesthetics come from, this is where the fuse got lit. The Sweet Body of Deborah, 1968. The Italians know how to do sleaze with style, and The Sweet Body of Deborah is a perfect cocktail of sex, suspense, and swinging 60s decadence. This isn't just exploitation, it's Eurotrash at its most glamorous, a fever dream of murder and desire dressed up in pop art colors. And for anyone who thinks the giallo craze started with Dario Argento, guess again, this is the film that kicked off the trend for erotic thrillers that would rule European cinema for a decade. Carol Baker, fresh from shocking Hollywood, in Baby Doll, turns up the heat as Deborah, an American newlywed who finds herself entangled in blackmail, paranoia, and murder on the Italian Riviera. Lou Castel, all sullen cheekbones and bad intentions, plays the husband who may, or may not, be out to kill her. Every frame oozes danger and temptation. There are bodies in the garden, men lurking behind every curtain, and a sense that nobody is telling the truth. Director Romolo Guerrieri cranks up the tension, tossing in lurid violence, twisted sex, and more plot twists than a daytime soap. The whole thing feels like a fever dream. Half murder mystery, half psychedelic nightmare, all attitude. Scorsese has spoken about the influence of these early giallo films, how they made American thrillers look tame by comparison, and how their impact is still felt in everything from Basic Instinct to his own Cape Fear. The Sweet Body of Deborah is a masterclass in using style as a weapon. It's exploitation, but it's also an early sign that Europe was ready to give Hollywood a run for its money, both in pushing boundaries and making audiences sweat. Pour yourself a drink, close the blinds, and let the paranoia wash over you. If. 1968. Sometimes, exploitation isn't about blood or sex. It's about revolution. If is one of those films that lands like a Molotov cocktail through the window of polite society. Lindsay Anderson's savage attack on the British boarding school system starts out with buttoned-up tradition, then descends into anarchy, surrealism, and full-on fantasy violence. It's the movie that made Malcolm McDowell a star and put the fear of youth revolt into every establishment figure from London to Los Angeles. The plot is deceptively simple. 3 rebellious students at an elite school push back against the relentless cruelty and hypocrisy of their teachers and prefects. What starts as mischief escalates into all-out war. Anderson uses documentary realism, dream sequences, and abrupt shifts between color and black and white to keep you off balance. By the time the boys finally snap, you're not sure what's real and what's a violent daydream, but you're gripped all the same. If got banned, censored, and furiously debated. Some called it dangerous, a call to arms for a generation ready to tear down the old world. Others hailed it as a masterpiece, a bold slap in the face to authority. Scorsese is on record saying that films like If showed just how far cinema could go when it dared to question everything. The film's willingness to blur fantasy and reality, to treat rebellion as both necessary and terrifying, still resonates today. This isn't just a movie. It's an explosion, and the shockwaves are still being felt. The lesson? Sometimes the most subversive movies are the ones that refuse to give you easy answers, or any comfort at all. If is pure, concentrated revolution, packaged as exploitation, and detonated on screen for anyone brave enough to face it. Succubus Mil Novecentos e Sessenta e Oito. Jess Franco. Ready to get weird? Succubus is Jess Franco's midnight invitation to a fever dream you might not wake up from. The film doesn't just blur the line between art and sleaze. It bulldozes it. Janine Reno stars as Lorna, a nightclub performer who slips into a world of sadomasochism, black magic, and waking nightmares. Franco, the ultimate cinematic outlaw, isn't interested in story as much as pure sensation. There's sex, violence, hypnosis, and surreal imagery, all swirling together in a neon-drenched labyrinth. Censors tried to smother Succubus in bans and edits across Europe, but its cult grew because nobody could decide exactly what it was. Is it horror, erotic fantasy, avant-garde trash? Franco keeps you guessing and a little off balance at every turn. That's exactly what Scorsese admires. The fearless willingness to push boundaries and make movies that are as much about how you feel as what you see. Succubus isn't just exploitation. It's cinema as a strange, forbidden ritual. Franco's fingerprints are all over today's dreamlike, boundary-busting horror. If you want to understand how filmmakers use style and taboo to shock and seduce, this film is a masterclass. Watching it is a little like following a stranger down a dark alley. You know you shouldn't, but you're compelled anyway. That's the true thrill of exploitation. You never know what you'll find on the other side. Mudhoney, 1965. Want to see America's wild side before Hollywood cleaned up its act? Cue Russ Meyer's Mudhoney, a steamy dirt road shocker that feels like a Southern Gothic fever dream on moonshine. Forget subtlety. Meyer brings the heat, the lust, and the madness with the energy of a preacher and the soul of a pulp novelist. The plot sounds simple, but nothing about Mudhoney is tame. A drifter stumbles into a backwater town where every secret festers and every relationship is twisted. Meyer paints the Depression-era Midwest as a landscape of sin and desperation. There's the battered wife, the sadistic husband, the lusty preacher, and a parade of townsfolk who seem one thunderstorm away from tearing each other apart. Meyer's camera loves the chaos, sweaty close-ups, wild brawls, and unhinged melodrama that careens between sex and violence with gleeful abandon. What makes Mudhoney legendary is its sense of anything goes. Meyer was working outside the studio system, with total freedom to show rural America as a cauldron of desire and decay. It's exploitation at its most American, bold, sweaty, and just a little bit dangerous. Scorsese has praised Meyer for his fearless storytelling and his ability to mix trashy spectacle with genuine artistry. Mudhoney isn't just a grindhouse footnote. It's a primal howl from a filmmaker who knew how to get under your skin. If you want to understand why exploitation movies mattered, start here. You'll see a mirror held up to America's shadow, and maybe even catch a reflection of your own wild side. After all, sometimes the most honest films are the ones nobody dares to talk about in polite company. So, are you still with us, or did this lineup leave you reeling? That's what exploitation cinema does. It drags you out of your comfort zone, strips away the safe edges, and forces you to see just how wild movies can get. Scorsese knows the real history of film is written in the margins, by rebels and rule breakers. Drop your wildest exploitation pick in the comments, subscribe for more movie deep dives, and remember, the greatest shocks are hiding just off the main road.